don't kill me. I have a lot to live for. I have a wife and kids.
Alright, we're going to do 20 seconds of silence first, and then I'll have you start.
Okay.
I'll just point at you.
Alright.
This is possibly one of the weirdest things to ever happen to me, and a throwaway seems like a good idea when telling it. I just moved to London, and being a bit lonely and wanting to get into the dating scene, I tried doing the whole OkCupid thing. It was alright, and I honestly wasn't too active on it. I check on my account a few times a week and message some profiles of girls that I thought were pretty. 95% of the time my messages would go unanswered. I'd guessed it was mostly because many of my messages in retrospect were pretty uncreative and dry. One day, I was messing around looking through various profiles when I saw an extremely attractive girl and decided I had to message her. In my opinion, she was a perfect 10, not just the fact that she was a gorgeous blonde, but we liked a lot of the same music and movies, and well, I could actually send her a decent email because of all of the things we had in common. I also need to reiterate that most of her pictures were of her smoking, which definitely clouded my judgment. I should also mention that I'm a former military and Afghan veteran, so nothing really scares me. Almost immediately after pressing send, she responded. We messaged each other through the OkCupid messenger service for about a week, and I got to learn a lot about her. Her name was Aoife, and she was from Belfast. She told me she had a daughter named Rosen, which didn't really bother me, and had a very long, complicated story about how she grew up a Catholic in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, and was an orphan at a young age. She seemed really driven and had such an amazing story. I had so many questions, and in all reality, a lot of respect for her, so it was really easy to keep talking to her. Within about another week, we started talking on the phone, and then sometimes on Skype. She'd never do an actual video chat, which at the time I didn't think was too weird, but she'd send me pictures of her and her daughter, friends, etc. For the most part, this whole thing seemed legit. The stories she had were pretty detailed, and she was talking about stuff that I really didn't know a lot about, and honestly couldn't comprehend. Then there were parts of the story that seemed to get kinda weird and didn't add up. At first, she told me she was a hairstylist at some swank place in central London. I don't really frequent Central a lot, so okay, no biggie. I just met her online. I wasn't going to head into Central to stalk her at work. Then she said that she owned a bar in Camden called the Lock Tavern, which I looked up on the internet, and is a real place, and managed it on weekends. She had detailed stories about the bouncers and regulars, etc. This didn't seem to make a lot of sense, but okay. I mean, I guess you could do both jobs and be a full-time mom. It seemed odd, but she seemed driven, and she also seemed really hot, so who was I to judge? Again, I wasn't going to be super creeper and pop down there. I just took her word for it. She also said she lived in a really nice penthouse near Covent Garden, which, if anyone knows the London real estate market, didn't seem plausible on a hairdresser barmaid's wages. She explained this by saying that she had fallen into some money after the Troubles. It seems kind of far-fetched, but again, without actually meeting her, who am I to judge? I started to notice some other weird things. She'd send me pictures, and in some of them, certain tattoos were present, and some they weren't. I figured she was just sending old pictures, but I remember that is what started to tip me off, that things were fishy to say the least. But again, there's really nothing wrong with sending old pictures, and I had no real reason not to believe the photos were of Aoife. They all seemed like the same girl, and without the exception of the tattoos and some small changes in hair color, nothing really seemed out of the ordinary. She would also send pictures of her daughter, Rosa, whom she claimed was 14. Finally, after talking to Aoife for a few weeks online, I asked her out on a date. I figured it was time I finally meet her. We were set to meet up on a Friday night, and on that Friday night she doesn't respond to a single text or call. I had nowhere to meet her. By around 9 p.m., she texts saying things got out of control at her pub, and she was really sorry, but she had to cancel. I was upset and should have bailed there, but I forgave her, and we agreed to set up another first meeting. Things from here really started to get weird. As I said, I was doing the online dating thing, and in this time, I'd met a few other girls. Another girl named Jo had asked me out, who turned out to be a psychopath, but that's just because she had an uncontrollable temper, and is nothing interesting enough to put on here. I went out with Jo one night in an area of London called Shoreditch, which isn't too far from where Aoife's pub was. While I was out, Aoife called and texted me a few times. I basically just ignored the calls. When the date was over, I said bye to Jo and went home and called Aoife. She asked where I was, and basically, well, I lied. I said I was out with a friend. Aoife didn't say anything, and we talked on the phone for a bit, and then said goodnight. The situation got strange a few nights later when Aoife caught me in a lie. She claimed to know that I was out with another girl. She knew which restaurant I was at and the night that I had been there. She knew what Jo had looked like. Aoife claimed that one of the bouncers from her pub knew what I looked like because she had shown photos of me to him, and he recognized me when I came through the doors at the restaurant in Shoreditch. This got odd. This was odd, to say the least. I basically told Aoife that the date was set up before I'd ever met her, and that we weren't really dating. She had no right to be upset, plus she'd stood me up. If anyone should be mad, it's me. To be honest, I forgot what really happened in this part of the story. I think we fought for a little bit, didn't talk for a few weeks. Then one night she called me really late. It seemed off, so I answered. She was panicking. From what I could tell, she was suffering from sleep paralysis, which I know is scary, so I stayed on the phone with her until she went back to sleep. This happened a few more times. I really had no intention to date or even see her. I went home to the US for about a month, and while I did, kept limited contact. There was nothing too serious, and my expectations were pretty low. After I'd gotten back to London, she invited me out. I don't remember much of the details, but she ended up canceling on me. I basically decided fuck it. I wasn't even upset. We had texted a little bit, but the communications really started to die down. I really didn't think much about it, and went on with my life. Then one night, I entered the Twilight Zone. One day, I was in the King's Cross, St. Pancras area with a friend of mine from the States. He had to make a meeting nearby, so I was by myself in the area. That's when I got a text from Aoife. She asked me if I wanted to meet up, and I figured, hell, might as well finally meet this girl. I was in the same area of town, 2 stops away, and I didn't see any harm in it. She told me to meet her up in Camden, and she'd be in the Weatherspoons pub at noon. It wasn't a date, and at this point, I was really curious as to who she was. I'd literally spent hours talking and texting to this girl, so I don't know Camden that well, and I'm getting texts from her on the way up. As I'm trying to find the Weatherspoons, she's telling me she's at work and in the process of selling her share in the bar, but she's on her way. Another friend of hers is at the bar, but he's a great guy. You'll like him again. I was already there. Might as well meet her friend. Then I meet Reese. Reese was a tall, skinny ginger kid. He was about 21 and had a thick Irish accent. I walked up to him, shook his hand, and we got drinks. He seemed nice enough, and for as weird as the situation could potentially be, it wasn't all that uncomfortable. Another one of his friends was there as well. They seemed like two nerds in their early 20s. They talked about football and video games and all the other stuff 20-something-year-old kids talk about, mixed in with a little bit of politics and a couple of random questions about how do you know Aoife, etc. I'd been in Afghanistan fighting the Taliban a few years prior. The situation wasn't anything to be concerned about. Then I got a text from Aoife, something along the lines of, "Hey, getting tied up. Be there in about an hour." Reese seemed nice enough, so we hung out for a few more beers and we moved to the next pub. Still no Aoife. Reese and his friend was nice. We did rounds, and fortunately, I hold my beer pretty well. Another apologetic text from Aoife rolls in. "Fuck it, we're drinking," I thought, and we're having a good time. Reese would ask me random questions about Aoife, but basically I shrugged it off. Being one of the only few things we had in common, we bar hopped around London for a bit. At one point, I was in the queue to buy a round of drinks and felt like this guy was way too close to me. I turned around and saw an overweight old man with an ugly brown jacket and a pockmarked face. He had a crucifix tattooed on his neck. In all honesty, a typical barfly you'd see in a British pub. I'd say excuse me and walk past him. We'd continue to drink and bullshit the day away. By this time, it was like 2 or 3 o'clock and Aoife is nearing 3 hours late. I decide, fuck it, let's go to the Lock Tavern. Reese and his friend seemed cool with it. We get there, and there's 2 Irish tricolors flying above the place. "Yeah, you can tell Aoife owns the place, huh?" Reese said. The part of the story kinda added up. We went into her place. I text her to tell her we're there. "Oh great, I'm almost done with this. I'll be down in a minute." She never comes down. But this is when the story gets really, really weird. This other dude named Pete shows up, shakes Reese's hand, and Reese says, "Oh, you're here to meet Eva." I look at Reese, and he's like, this must seem weird. Eva is Aoife's best friend. Now, this seemed really weird, but I needed to figure out what was going on. These 2 girls have almost exactly the same name. I had never heard Aoife mention Eva before. I start talking to Pete, and Reese starts asking similar questions to him about Aoife that he was asking me about Aoife. But some of these questions were getting more serious. He was asking him things like, "Do you love her?" Pete's story then starts to sound eerily similar to mine. Pete meets Eva online. She's from Northern Ireland, has a daughter named Rosa. In his version, she's 12. He'd tried to meet up with her a few times, but it fell through. He was invited last minute to hang out today. Oh shit, this is weird, is all I could think. Something wasn't right. At this point, I knew that someone was getting played, probably me, and I was in some kind of game, but I needed to figure out what exactly was going on. Pete and I started to figure out things right about the same time. Right in front of Reese, who stuck his guns on the story remarkably well. They both have similar names. They both have daughters that are around the same age, with a really common Irish name. I'm not buying it, neither is Pete. I decide that the pub we are in might not be friendly territory, and I don't want to get Shanghai, and Camden. So I suggest we leave. Eva sends me a text saying she's almost on her way down. Great, I said. Meets up with us in the street at some other pub. Pete and I start walking out. On the way out, I ask the bartender, "Hey, is Aoife working today?" He responds, "No, mate. Aoife hasn't worked here in 3 years." At this point, I know something really, really creepy is going on. We head to the next pub. I've got a good buzz going on, but I know I need to sober the fuck up fast. I think Pete might be a victim in this game too, but he might not be. He for sure can't be trusted. Reese and his buddy are suspect as well, but I don't have any proof yet, and my curiosity is keeping me there. We walk into another pub. Reese's friend says something to Reese, and I don't hear it. Neither does Pete. Reese loses it. He yells at his friend, and his friend basically says, "Fuck you, I'm out," and takes off. Pete and I are still trying to put things together. I find a table on an outdoor deck. It's quiet. I can think, and I can piece this together. It's amazing how fast you can sober up when you think you are in trouble. I ask Pete if he has any pictures of Eva, and Pete pulls out his phone. He shows me a picture that I'd seen before. "Wait, that's Rosa, Aoife's daughter." "No, mate, that's Aoife," Pete replies. This is making no sense. I'd been sent the same pictures of the same girl and been told it was Aoife's 14-year-old daughter. I showed Pete pictures that I had of Aoife. He claimed he'd never seen the girl in the photos before. Reese was sticking to the story that I had pictures of Aoife and Pete had pictures of Aoife, and that he wasn't sure why I thought the pic of Rosa. He also kept claiming that Aoife and Aoife texted him and they were on their way. That's when it dawned on me. I simply looked at Pete and asked him, "What number do you have in your phone for Eva?" Pete reads the number on his phone, and it turns out being the exact same number I had for Aoife in my phone. If all the other clues hadn't added up, this one sent it over the edge. It also sent Pete out of the bar as he literally jumped over a table and ran out the door in a panic. At this point, it was just me and Reese. I don't think that he had overheard that we both had the same number for someone that he was telling me were two separate girls. Reese said that Eva and Aoife had texted him and that they were on their way. I don't know who Aoife and Eva are at this point, or if they even exist. I basically tell Reese that I think he's playing some kind of fucked up game and that he's more than suspect of wrongdoing. He took offense to this and physically threatened me. He wasn't a big dude and knew if he stepped to me, it wasn't going to end well. I basically walked right through him, knocking him into the door frame, and tore out of the bar. I headed straight for the tube. I needed to jump on the Northern Line and get home. I wasn't waiting for anything. At this point, I have no idea what the fuck is going on. At best, I'd been caught up in some weird fucking catfish scam. At worst, I was almost a victim of a snuff movie. I get on the tube and there's a guy right behind me. I look at him. He's overweight, pock-marked face, brown jacket. We make eye contact. I look up at his neck and there's a crucifix tattoo. It's the same guy from earlier. I'm a bit worried, but I've been under worse pressure before in my life. I calmly sat down on the train. The train was being held in Camden for some reason and wasn't moving. That's when who jumps out of the same carriage as the two of us, Reese. I could have sworn he made eye contact and gave a nod to the man in the brown jacket. At this point, I played dumb that they were there. On the London Tube, there's a certain dinging noise that's made right before the doors close. I waited to hear that noise and then bolted out of the door. I ran around and doubled back on the tube several times. When I finally got back home, I texted a friend in New Cross and told her I was scared I was being followed. She was having a party that night and invited me over. I really didn't want to head home alone. At this point, I think I doubled back and switched lines enough that if Reese and the man in the brown coat were following me, I had lost them. I made it to New Cross safe and sound. I had a few calls from Aoife the next few days, but never wanted to answer them. She also sent a few texts saying we needed to talk. Eventually, she stopped calling and texting altogether. I have a few theories on the whole issue. One of my friends thinks that Reese and Aoife are the same person. I wouldn't rule it out, but the person I talked to on the phone definitely sounded like a woman. One night in November of 2017, when I was 22 years old, my mom and I went grocery shopping. While standing in the bakery section, my mom and I ran into my aunt, and the three of us stood there and chit-chatted for a while. I had been feeling generally uneasy around this time because I had recently been watching a lot of YouTube videos about true crime and creepy encounters. I was having trouble sleeping and had been getting scared when I was home alone and heard the tiniest noises. Due to this uneasiness or paranoia, I guess, I was very alert and on edge at the bakery at my grocery store. I stood there with my back to the bagels and kept an eye on everyone walking around past us as my mom and aunt shared stories. Nobody seemed suspicious until I caught the eye of a prematurely balding man. He looked like your average mid-30s, brony neckbeard nice guy. I remember thinking to myself, God, he's kinda creepy looking, isn't he? As he walked through the produce section into the bakery, but then I started to feel bad. Chill out, you're being way too judgmental, I told myself, going so far as to even smile at him out of sheer guilt. He's probably staring at you because you're staring at him. He's just glancing on his way by. He's going to forget about you the second he takes his eyes off of you, right? Wrong. I completely forgot about this experience for a few blissfully ignorant months. Then in January, I received a messenger request from an old friend I'd like to touch with. My long-lost friend was the first of many to reach out, saying that there was a lot of buzz on Facebook about a local sex offender who had been taking pictures of young women with hair he deemed pretty, some in their 20s, like me, some well below the age of 18, and posting them on a picture-sharing site. I don't know exactly how, but his online albums, stocked with, and I am not exaggerating, thousands of these pictures had been found, and a bunch of screenshots were being plastered all over Facebook to raise awareness. My old friend saw a few pictures of me standing against the bagels, flanked by my mother and my aunt, my long hair hanging down, and my post-French braid waves. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the screenshots. I told my family about what I just found out, and my brother immediately called the police to report it. As he was talking to an officer, I received more screenshots, this time of the creep's sex offender registry page. It was the man from the grocery store, the man I was initially unnerved by, the man I felt guilty about, the man I smiled at. When my brother got off the phone with the police, he told us that they had been flooded with reports all night. While sympathetic, the policeman my brother spoke to said there was nothing they could do, as the creep was legally within his rights to take those pictures of us out in public. The man was allegedly assaulted outside of a convenience store the night his pictures were discovered. Before he even realized it, he had been exposed, and he has since been arrested for possession of child pornography. and an unrelated case. My brother had actually been aware of this guy long before, as he was apparently infamous on the net for being a sketchy white dude who was obsessed with Asian women, had a hair fetish, and oh yeah, was a convicted sex offender. So as they say, creepy photographer, let's not meet again. So I just started my first job. It's a fry cook job at a royal fast food chain in America. My first days started off fantastic until I met my male manager. At first he seemed nice, way better than the female manager. He laughed and joked around with me and the other employees and generally made me feel pretty comfortable at a new place. Fast forward a few hours after meeting him, and shit hit the fucking fan very fast. I feel like to get the whole creepy factor, I should probably first describe what this guy looks like. He's tall and greasy, fat, has glasses, pimply, grayish black buzz cut, has glasses. He looks like a total neckbeard. He also talks like Renee from Storage Wars. Okay, so I'm getting off topic again, but I digress. This manager is a creepy dude. My first shift with him started off swell, like I said, but after the main manager left, It started off innocent enough. He asked if I liked mini golf. I wanted to be polite, and I told him yes. Then he proceeds to ask me to go mini golfing with him like 4 times. I'm a minor, and I told him I don't think my parents would be very comfortable with that. His response, "We can just tell them that Sarah, the female manager, is coming too." I brushed this off because maybe the guy is just lonely. No biggie, right? Wrong. The next day, another woman, Hannah, was training me. She's about 50 and very sweet. I was making the sandwiches pretty quickly, and she was excited. She said that I was doing a great job, and that she hoped I'd stay around for a while because I was making her day brighter. Then the manager came around and says, "I hope you stay too. We need more cute girls around here." I quickly excused myself to go to the ladies' room to text my boyfriend and tell him what had just happened. Within 5 minutes, he was at the store. He asked to speak with the manager and explained to them that one of his friends, me, was being treated inappropriately by a male manager. The creeper then comes out to the back where all of us were, standing and talking, and begins to flip shit. He goes into full-on rage mode, saying shit like, "If anyone thinks I'm trying to steal their fucking girlfriend, I have a fucking fiancé." Then starts showing us pictures of some random girl who is clearly not his fiancé. I clocked out and went home. I wasn't too scared since my boyfriend made sure they knew someone was having a problem. I figured if anything happened I could tell him and he would solve it. The next day I went into work. Same boring shit. Creepy manager showed up halfway through. It got slow and we were all bullshitting again, and he came into the back and joined our conversation. I was talking about my boyfriend with Hannah, and she was laughing and calling me cute for blushing when I was talking about him. The manager then says, "Teal hair? Don't care. You should really smile more. Makes you look even cuter than you usually do. You look so innocent." I walked into the back to get on my phone. I come back, and the manager is standing there. "So, how old are you?" Stupid me answers, 17, but I'll be 18 in like a month." "I hope you're still here in a month. We can go out and do something for your birthday." At this point, I tried to walk away, but now he was blocking my path. Luckily, Hannah called me, and he moved. The entire day, I work until close. I could feel his beady eyes staring at me when I went outside with another worker so he could have a smoke break and I could get away from the creep. He walked over with his phone. On the screen was a picture of an Asian porn star in a schoolgirl outfit. "This is the kind of girl I'm into," he said. I tried to shuffle away slowly, but once again he was blocking my path. The guy who was outside noticed I was uncomfortable and stepped in between us and said, "Bruh, she's not even hot. Plus, she's got fake tits." I tried to get away again, but it didn't work. The manager then said something that makes my skin crawl, even to think about. "Yeah, but it's the face, the innocence. Something about taking advantage of someone just does something for me." I would like to say that I noped the fuck out, quit, called the owner, anything that might have even been a little bit useful, but I didn't. I finished my shift, listened to this dude talk about all the sex he had when he was my age and how I shouldn't stay with one person for too long. I need to mix it up a bit or else I'll get bored. On my way home, I almost cried. I felt so disgusting. I went in and the next day hoping to speak with a different manager about him, but he was the only one there. I uncomfortably worked my shift while trying to avoid him as much as possible. Eventually, he managed to corner me again, this time asking me about the ring on my thumb and my boyfriend. Somehow the conversation topic changed to the future, and if I ever planned on getting married. Obviously, I said yes to try to deter him, but he pressed on. I told him, "Maybe I'll end up with a woman, you never know." He then began to flip shit again. He said, "Don't ever end up being a lesbian. That's horrible. At least be bisexual. That way guys can have a little bit of fun too. Don't be selfish." I rolled my eyes and walked away. Later on, the other worker went on break. During breaks, we aren't supposed to stay in the store, so I guess he left or whatever. But I was alone with the creep, and I started cleaning so that when 11 came, I'd go home faster. He then tried to have a conversation with me about what fun I thought was okay at my age. I quickly told him about how I was waiting until marriage because I have too much to focus on right now with college and stuff. He said, "Come on, a little bit of fun isn't gonna be too bad. You just need to feel pleasure. Then you'll understand." I was too scared to do anything, so I just went into the ladies' room and felt really uncomfortable. That night, my mom was picking me up. It was 11:30, and I was waiting outside of the store for her, so I could just leave. I was waiting outside for like 2 minutes when the manager comes outside. "Come wait inside. A pretty girl like you should not be standing out here alone." I told him that I lived down the street and my mom would be here in a minute. He said, "I can always drive you home. I'll never let a woman walk home. It's against my moral." I then took out my phone and told my mom to hurry the fuck up and come ASAP. Her contact photo came up. It was a picture of us at graduation. The manager says, "Is that your mom? She's really cute, but I still think you're cuter." I called my mom, and of course, she didn't fucking answer. "Are you nervous? Come here, give me a hug. I'm sure she'll be here in a minute." I never ran so fast in my fucking life. I sprinted out the door, away from him, right as my mom showed up. Fast forward to last week. I was working till close alone with him. I texted my boyfriend about how uncomfortable I was, and he came to the store and waited in the parking lot for me. When suddenly, the creepy manager gets a text from the main manager cussing him off for not doing his count. He freaks out, throwing a tantrum like a child, yelling, kicking stuff, the whole 9 yards. I keep cleaning my shit, not wanting to get involved. He went into the freezer at 11. I did all the dishes and mopped up until about 11:40. He finally comes out of the freezer crying. I said, "Fuck this shit, dude. I'm done right now, alright?" And I clocked out. My boyfriend was still waiting outside, so I walked over to his car and kissed him and shit, when suddenly I looked up. The manager was staring at us. My boyfriend drove me to my car and urged me to quit. So creepy, neckbeard manager, please, leave me the fuck alone. I met Jacob in my science class, but we actually started talking during a dumb assembly, and we sat together because we were both the loner types in our class. We had so much in common, and I grew to love him as a friend. We were really close. I was a very shy girl, never talked about what was going on with me mentally with anyone, but I could trust Jacob. I told him what my mother's boyfriend was doing to me, what Alex was like, and he helped me feel happy again. I told him how Alex was abusive and how I felt trapped with him. Jacob was always there when I got bruises and whatnot. Eventually, me and Alex had a fight, and I told him we were over because he only talked about sex. I felt like a weight was off of my shoulders for once. I told Jacob right away, and all he said was perfect. I thought it was a bit odd, but continued to hang out for the next few days. He suddenly asked me out, and I told him, "Jacob, no, I just got out of a relationship that really fucked me up. I can't handle that right now." He seemed very upset, but understood, so I thought. I come into my science class early to see Jacob crying with the teacher for some reason. She was a great teacher, always helped people struggling. She looked at me and waved me over. "Hey, I know you guys are besties. What's going on?" I have no idea. "Jacob says you don't want to be friends with him anymore. Did something happen?" I never said that. He asked me out and I said no, I want to be friends. "Oh, I'm sorry. But Jacob, can't you forgive your bestie? You guys have been so close. You don't want to throw that away, huh?" He just never responded and didn't show for school for like a week. I was worried and just told him I was here for him and didn't mean to upset him. He came back and it's like he was a different person. He had a huge scar on his neck, like he had been choked or something, and big scars on his wrists. I immediately started bawling my eyes out and hugged him, asking what happened.
"You don't love me, so I punished myself."
I dropped to the floor, crying, by my locker. I didn't know what to do. I loved my best friend, but I didn't want to date him. I just stayed by his side at all times. I tried to make him happy, like I used to. Nothing. He told me if I wanted to help, I'd have to kiss him better, and I just couldn't do that. Day after day, he told me how it's my fault he's depressed and hurting himself. So after a while, I started cutting, and because I was dealing with eating disorders, this didn't help. I just stopped eating for 2 months, where most of the time I'd switched to bulimia. I was so pale, my rib cage started showing a bit, and I looked unhealthy to the point my teacher got the school involved. I told them everything. I told them how I didn't want to lose Jacob, and I didn't want him to die because I didn't want to date him. And then he stopped coming to school. A month, and he was nowhere. I thought he was in the hospital or something. I asked my teacher if she knew if he was okay. She told me they sent him to a different school and that he wasn't allowed to talk to me or see me because he threatened other kids who I was close with, that he would hurt me if they talked to me, and those kids told the school. A few months later, I finally started to try and get better after we moved back to my old town. I get a friend request. The profile picture is something like in a horror film. It's Jacob with bloody bandages on his face revealing only one eye, and under the name of Gregory Black. I did not accept it, but got some creepy messages about how I'm not smart and that I make him go crazy, and how his mother threw him into a psych ward or something and he finally got out. I have no idea if anything he said was true, but honestly, I got fed up with him. I didn't care about him being my old bestie. He was awful, he needed help, and he refused it. I blocked him, and I haven't heard from him since. So Jacob, let's not meet again. Now I'm healthy, I eat 3 meals a day, and I'm sober. I still have anxiety and depression, but I plan on getting help, and though I wish no harm on him, I really do hope he gets the help he needs. Know your worth and know when you need to leave. This leads into why I was so messed up with the neckbeard story. Even with all of this bad shit that happened to me, I don't look for sympathy. I only hope that if you are struggling to get help or leave a situation before it messes you up. I definitely learned a lot through my experiences, and I am proud of who I am today. Don't be afraid to ask for help, or to tell your family or anyone you can trust to get out of a bad place. So, I was a college student back in 2009, 2010, I can't remember the exact year. Anyway, I was introduced to a friend of an acquaintance while in the cafeteria one day. The guy was skinny, dark-skinned, wore glasses, and kinda looked like a nerd in a pretentious, rich gangster kinda way. He usually wore button-down, short-sleeved shirts tucked into his pants with a belt. You'd probably have to meet him to get the image. The first thing he does after introducing himself to me and chatting a bit about random things, such as our goals for the future, if I remember right, is try to inundate me with all kinds of information about the Jewish Torah and how all religion is basically fake. He told me all about how the Bible and other religious books were bastardizations of this and how the definitions changed the meaning of everything, mostly about the different names for God or the Lord and how it pertained to different entities. I found him interesting, but at the time I was in an atheistic phase and wasn't all that interested, but it rubbed me wrong for some reason I couldn't explain, almost like cognitive dissonance. Also, I forgot to mention that the very first thing he did was introduce himself under a false name from a nation, Judea, or something very similar. We exchanged numbers and talked. One of the first things I noticed about this guy was how controlling and kind of manipulative he was. He would say things like,
If you want to be friends, you've got to be this sort of way.
or
You can't eat certain foods because our way of life forbids it.
he really wanted me on board with his religious thing for some reason. He would offer advice and help about things too, like romantic problems. He would end up being the first person I ever truly got drunk with, which was ironically a fun time. One of the things I learned very early on about this guy was that when he wasn't harping on about religious rules and stuff like that, that he was one of the funniest people I ever knew. He knew how to party, how to socially connect to people, and some conversations we had were very interesting, so we became the kind of friends that talk on the phone often. But one of the other things I noticed about him was he had this very creepy Jim Jones, Charles Manson kind of ability to make people listen to him and believe the things he told them. It was also very unsettling. I was well aware of his propensity towards manipulation quite early on, but for some reason I felt obligated to hang out with him until, of course, it became a sort of friendship, my strangest friendship ever. Another creepy thing about him is that he would show up when I'd least expect or want him to. I would turn my head and he'd be there. I was always super careful not to talk about him very loudly because he would do this quite often. Once when I was walking with my mom and really did not want to introduce them, but had to anyway. By then I already knew he was a psychopath and a narcissist. He had no empathy for anyone at all and would stroke his own ego all day long. He was incredibly vain too and took all kinds of useless supplements for no real apparent reason. When we were on the phone, he would tell me things about how the different names for God aforementioned were actually about aliens. He said humans were designed to mine gold because it would make the aliens immortal. The story he would try to sell me on would change many things over the course of our friendship, depending on what he was into. It would go from Jewish to Jamaican, then to Egyptian, then to something else I can't remember. Sometimes it would have elements of spirituality in it, and other times he would say that after we died, that's it. He'd talk about how beings lived in the sun and under the moon, and how light was fake and only dark light existed. Then he'd talk about how I should put together all of my college loan money with his so he could buy a house near the beach and we would live it up down there. Like I'd fall for that. Anyway, we meet these girls and he wanted to show me how easy college girls are. So he starts chatting up this girl and her friend who happens to be lesbian. Their relationship is short-lived, and it's mostly because she said he had a temper and was too controlling. She's the one who told me his real name because she saw his ID card. So this guy gets the idea that he wants to kill her and her friend for humiliating him. Apparently the ex-friend mocked him or something. He said, "We don't let people do things like that to us and get away with it." So he started shopping around for poisons, a gun, and a knife. Anything to try to get his revenge. He talked other people into helping him get these things too. So I see that this is getting out of hand, and the girl is a very nice girl, so I do the only thing I can do and tell security. But I tell them to keep me anonymous because this guy is fucking crazy and has said many things about wanting to be a gangster and wanting to kill people. Well, those fucking idiot security guards fucked that up, and he ends up finding out about it. I find out from a mutual friend at some point that this guy wanted to kill me. He plans to do so, but it seemed like some people either didn't come through for him or those friends weren't that into the idea. Anyway, we sort of pseudo-bury the hatchet, although he did tell me many times that he could kill me himself. But he wouldn't do that because I'm one of his one and only true friends. I don't doubt that he would try to do it. I told him I was manipulated into telling on him. Long story. As you can tell, this story needed to be any longer, and I'm trying to just give highlights and context. The things he said kept getting crazier and crazier, and if you tried to disagree with him, he would just get argumentative with tons of false facts or continue on. Some people actually bought this shit and were kind of like disciples to him, but I just couldn't get behind blatant lies that a sociopath made up. At a later point, we decided to go to a beach town to hang out and get drunk and have some fun. Yes, I was tempting fate, but back then I didn't care so much about my life, and I really needed to get out and break free from being a shut-in that never did anything. So me, him, 2 other friends went to this awesome college beach party town. It's only important to mention this because one of the friends he invited along was a guy with social issues that he didn't actually know. The guy just had money, and the other guy had a car. He used these guys as a means to an end. They weren't his friends. To my surprise, at one point the guy with the car strands us in the middle of the night when the whole town goes dead. Our cell phones died, and a drug dealer was the only hope for a ride we could get, so the dealer requests we hold something for him in exchange for a ride while he goes to get his granny's car. Charles makes me put it in my pocket after a bit. Looking back, the guy was doing everything he could to make me look more suspicious. He had me wait in an alley. I can't remember why exactly. He said it was out of sight, but the dealer came back and said that what he was doing was fucked up and that I stuck out over there in that sort of shadowy area. Looking back, if a cop would have drove by, they would have detained me on the spot, then taken the drugs off of my person and arrested me. Eventually, we leave and Charles decides that we should just keep the stuff the dealer handed him because he never came back anyway. So we were waiting by the gas station, and this guy literally goes up to a fucking police officer to ask for a ride. By this time, he had taken the stuff back and forced the other guy to hold on to it, but he had assumed that the socially awkward guy gave it back to me by then. I am sure that he was trying to get me in trouble at that point. Anyway, after we made it back, things went back to how they usually go. If I haven't mentioned it, Charles was a womanizer. He didn't care who it was. He'd go for her. He'd get with a woman that he thought would be impossible for anyone at all to get with, like married teachers and devout churchgoers who were in committed relationships, but he also didn't seem to have standards. He just liked to ruin people's relationships and their lives. It kind of shattered my illusions of people at the time, because it showed me that everyone could be manipulated into doing things, and that identity and personality didn't mean anything. I'm not sure, but I might have been depressed for a long time after that. Anyway, there was this girl who was a pastor's daughter, sort of pretty. She kept to herself mostly. Charles decided to go out with her at some point, and she entered this rebellious phase where she was sleeping around with everyone. She also didn't bathe or take care of herself. Apparently Charles was her first. When I asked her if that was true, she proceeded to tell me horror stories about how he was manipulative and abusive towards her, and one time, during a fight while they were walking back to campus, he tried to push her into traffic. This was told to me during a period of time he had left and gone somewhere for an internship. Thankfully, I thought, because I wasn't likely to see him again, at least not for a long time. I was wrong. He came back when I least expected it, and he was just as fucked up as ever. I told him I thought a girl liked me once and expressed a desire to get with her. Just random conversation that I didn't think would go anywhere. I just needed to work up the nerve and do it. Upon hearing this, he goes over to her. They talk. Next thing I know, they are in a relationship. This relationship lasts a few weeks, and for some reason, he's told her and everyone else that I'm his cousin. Suddenly they break up, and she's avoiding both him and me. I try to explain that I'm not like him, and that she doesn't need to be afraid of me, but she absolutely refuses to be around me. If I sit at the table that all of our friends are at, except Charles, she gets up and leaves. Someone asks her about it, and she told them that it was because Charles was my cousin and that he did horrible things to her when they were together. This scumbag did that stuff just because I liked her, and in a way, it was my fault. Anyway, a few years later, 2012 or something, I have a new circle of friends. A guy named Ricky, another named Mike, and a girl named Karen. Ricky had a huge crush on Karen, but we all got along with just fine. One day, Charles just shows up and tries to get Ricky to join us in our adventures, or what the fuck ever. I'm really just trying to find any excuse to distance myself at this point, but I guess at this junction in my life, I'm still way too shy to tell people off, or not to be afraid to speak up. Anyway, this idiot has some plan to form our own gang or something, and one day he's trying to three-way call us. I badly wanted to tell Ricky that giving him his number was a terrible idea, but I didn't want to get shot or stabbed or anything. I didn't pick up the phone, and apparently they had a conversation. Later on, I found out that during their few weeks of friendship, Charles was trying to get Ricky into a plan to lure me into some trap and kill me. He had sold Ricky a lie originally that I liked Karen and Ricky didn't seem to mind, and said that he would step down, so Charles started spinning other lies. Ricky didn't go for any of it in the end, and we talked and had a long, healthy conversation about it. Ricky is still a good friend to this day. Eventually, Charles left, and the last I heard from him was some voicemail from 2015 or something. Hands down the creepiest person I've ever met, befriended, made an enemy of, and then had to play cool with for years on end, just not to get killed or worse. He never did admit his real name to me. He always introduced himself under false names to strangers too. Charles, let's not ever fucking meet again. For some context, this took place in June 2018, about 2 weeks before I turned 18. I'm female, and had just finished my A-levels and decided to join Tinder for a joke, just to have a bit of fun and waste time. I thought it would be fun to put my Snapchat in my bio, just to see how many people added me, and I admit I enjoy the attention from guys. People added me, but no one actually messaged me except one guy. I'll keep his name anonymous. This guy was 20, I was 17 at the time, and was about an hour drive away from me. This is important later. We started off just innocently chatting. The conversation was dry, but it killed boredom, so I held the conversation. One day, he randomly popped up asking me, "So, when are we gonna meet then?" I was hesitant at first, but I agreed. In the end, after I ran it over my parents, I invited him over to my house. I don't know what I was thinking, but I told him he could come over. He got there the next day at 9 a.m., bearing in mind he lived an hour away from me. First red flag. I was confused as hell and wasn't even dressed for the day. Nevertheless, I invited him in and finished getting ready. We just chilled and watched films all day before I headed off. Around 2 p.m., we chilled by the beach for a bit before coming back to the house at 5 p.m. I was expecting him to go home after that, but no, he stayed. We watched a couple more films, and every now and then I would look over to him and catch him flat out staring at me. He would lock eyes and would say something creepy like, "I love your eyes," or "I'm so glad I have met you," all while knowing me for all of 8 hours. I regret to say we ended up kissing A lot I felt awkward in being a naive 17-year-old on her first real date. I thought that was what you were supposed to do. He left at around 10 p.m. He was at my house for 13 hours, but there were no sparks at my end. I was only expecting this to be a one-time thing. Nope, he turned up at 9 a.m. again, like 2 days later. I went along with it because I had nothing better to do. Didn't leave again until 9 p.m. At this point, I had no interest in seeing him again and didn't really feel a romantic connection with him. I will admit, I may have led him on, as I never actually told him I wasn't interested. Looking back now, I should have told him, and maybe the next event wouldn't have happened. My birthday rolls around. Well, the day before, he shows up at 9 a.m. again and takes me out. We go to the mall, and he buys me so much. I keep saying, no, you don't have to, and let me buy this, but he insisted because it was my birthday. I had only met this guy twice before and known him all of 5 minutes, and he was buying me so much stuff like clothes, makeup, and, sexy underwear. I was still only 17. Even though my birthday was the next day, I felt like I was being treated like a prostitute. Every time we walked around, he would force my hand into his and try and kiss me. I felt so awkward. Anyway, we would get back to my house around 6 p.m. I come home to flowers from him and that he had delivered to my house. We chill in my room. I didn't know what to do. I felt trapped. I felt like I couldn't tell him to leave because he had just spent so much money on me. Anyway, he tried to have sex with me, and he kept saying, "Come on, didn't you have a nice birthday? And I came all this way for you." Just creepy stuff like that trying to get me to sleep with him. I just kissed him and told him I didn't want to. I wasn't a virgin, but I definitely didn't want to sleep with him. He finally leaves and just break down crying. I don't know why. I just felt so trapped. I tried and be cold with him over message and stuff for the next few days, hoping to scare him off. Nope. About 3 days after my birthday, I get home from work at 9 p.m. Guess whose car I see parked outside of my fucking house? Yep. I walk in, and he's just sitting, chatting with my family in the lounge. They seem to really like him, even though I'd fucking told them how creepy he was. We ended up going to a local pub and getting drinks. We get back to my house, and I'm pretty drunk. He ordered me spirits, pretty much, even when I hadn't even asked him to buy me a drink. So I suggest more drinks and crack open a bottle of bubbly I saved for my birthday. As we are drinking more, he gets quieter. I look up at him and ask what's wrong, and he suddenly grabs me, kisses me, and tries to put his hand up my skirt. I immediately push him off and stare angrily at him. He then looks at me with a really sinister look and says, "I deserve it." Because he had alcohol, he couldn't drive me home, so he had to stay over. I tell him I'm too drunk and I just want to go to bed. Luckily, my mother happily showed him to the guest bedroom, and I didn't see him again until the morning. I woke up around 9 a.m. and walked downstairs to find him cuddling my cat in the garden. I tell him I had a call from work saying that they need me in about an hour and that he needs to leave. He tried to protest, saying that he'll wait till I'm finished and we can hang out, but I tell him no, and that I'm seeing a friend later, which wasn't a lie, but the work lie made him leave quicker, and yet he still protests, saying we can all hang out together. Eventually, he takes no for an answer and leaves. I cry and tell my mom everything. She still likes to tell me that he wasn't that bad to this day, but she didn't have to deal with him like I did. I meet my friend and tell her all about him, and then I'm going to leave in a couple of days and tell him I don't want to see him anymore. However, that same night I get a lengthy paragraph from this guy professing his undying love to me. Some of the most memorable quotes from this are, "You were my whole world. I'd be nothing without you, and I'm so glad I have met you. I can't wait to share a life together." That was it. I had to be straight up with him. I told him everything, that I didn't feel a connection to him, and that what he did to me when he was drunk was not okay. I even offered to return the things he bought, but he said no. Surprisingly, he actually apologized and said he was sorry for making me feel uncomfortable. Brilliant. Nope. He started stalking me. Anyway, who's got Snapchat will know that you can view a map that tells you where all of your friends are. You can turn it off so people can't see you, but I customize mine so that only people I'm close with can see where I am. He was one of them. I forgot to turn it off, and whenever I went out, he was there about an hour later. Remember, he lives about an hour from me. I first noticed he had followed me after I went to the beach. Same one I went to with him, with my friend. About 2 or 3 hours into our day, we were getting ready to go home. I opened my snap maps just so that I could see that me and my friend were together and show her. When I saw who shall not be named with us, his little Bitmoji character, probably like 200 yards away from us, seen just now, my eyes widened. I told my friend that the guy I had been complaining about all day was literally here, now with us somewhere. We both panicked and sped walked to my car and drove home. This happened 2 more times, once again with the same friend, when we visited a reservoir near my town. There was no reason for him to be there, so I messaged him. I asked him what he was doing at the reservoir when I got home. He said he was taking pictures, but the reservoir would have been more like a 3-hour road trip for him to drive, and he had never mentioned photography to me before, so I did not believe in him. It happened a 3rd time, and that's when I blocked him. I was with my goddamn extended family in a restaurant, yet this time he messaged me his location on Snapchat, which is a little thing you can do. He was in the fucking building. I had to then come up with an excuse to tell all my extended family, who I haven't seen for months, why we had to leave. I told my mom the truth, and then she explained to them after. They were understanding. I'd had enough. I didn't even message him again. I blocked him on everything, and I didn't hear from him again. In 2012, I was 12 years old. I got my first account on DeviantArt before I knew how to really draw. The only thing I knew how to do when it came to art was creepy pencil drawings with colored pencil etched into it. My first post was a drawing of a popular anime character with blue pigtails. So I drew a crappy rendition of this character, blissfully unaware that her skirt seemed to be too short in the drawing. Looking back, I was still at an immature age, so I didn't really think much of it at the time. Looking at the drawing now, it wasn't really that decent, but I didn't know that. Because I had drawn this, I saw a message on my submission where I uploaded it. In the comments of my drawing, there was someone who messaged me simply, "Hey, nice drawing," with the smiley face emoticon from the website. I was so excited because it was my first ever comment on one of my art pieces, I then looked at my profile and realized that he had watched me as well. Then I was very excited and happy. I also had my very first watcher on my account. His username was Gluten in the title. I don't remember the exact details of his name. He favorited my drawing, and I replied to his comment by simply saying, "Thanks." Here's where things got a bit weird for me. He replied, "You're welcome," like common courtesy on the website, but then followed the comment up with, "I really like how short you made the girl's skirt." Keep in mind I was only 12. I had no idea what he meant in that context, so I replied with, "It's a statement for anime girls to have short skirts," or something along those lines. He replied, "Oh, of course. Yours is my favorite." Okay, a bit of a strange reply. Before replying to him back, I dug a bit deeper into his profile, wondering if I should be nice to favorite him back. His profile stated that he was 21 years old. Yes, the site lets you display your exact age on the top front page. And it was the same for me. I legitimately put that I was 12. Did he realize how young I actually was for him to not be saying that? But like an oblivious 12-year-old, your brain doesn't quite piece things together, and you go along with whatever may cross your mind. So I friended this creepy man back. I don't remember the conversation after that, only that we kept it friendly and moved on. I would occasionally post more pictures, but he would comment only on a few of them, and usually he was nice. But then there was always some weird comment like, "I wonder how long she can sit on that. If I had the character in a certain pose," or "Can I get to taste her? Please, XD." And again, I would pay no mind to these comments because my watchers were building up to see my work, and I rarely replied to the man again. I did, however, go on his profile again after he commented something and found pictures of this elephant cartoon that I forgot the name of. He seemed to love this elephant cartoon that he was obsessed with, and everywhere on his profile I saw this cartoon and fan art of it. Then I looked more into his gallery, and there was a lot of these gray pieces with the minus sign on them, indicating that it was a not safe for work, 18 plus artwork. I didn't know this at the time either, so I tried pressing on it, wondering why it was grayed out. There then was a message that said, "Mature artwork. Must be 18 or older to view." I remember frowning at this, thinking that it wasn't fair for me to not see it. I wish I could tell you I never saw it to this day, and didn't let curiosity get the better of me. But I'd be very wrong. I made a second account claiming I was 18 just to see what type of art this guy drew because my mind was curious enough to see it. How I regretted that. He had fan art drawings relating to or hinting at illegal underage porn. There were really disturbing ones relating to the cartoon he liked, with the little girl elephant character being strangled and raped by her dad. There were pictures of anime girls looking 10 years old or possibly younger in sexual positions, getting raped by her dad. There were pictures of anime girls looking 10 years old or possibly younger in sexual positions, getting raped. There were even some more gore-fest pictures among the elephant ones I saw, and illegal porn images that he mixed with gore themes as well. Impalement, cutting out body parts with a knife, torture involving blood, hypnotism, etc. Suffice to say, I unfriended the guy on my main account and was extremely disturbed by this. A week later, he still messaged me on my main account and said, "Why did you unfriend me? Sad face." I felt no sympathy for him and said something along the lines of, "You are so disturbing. and you draw disgusting things. He said something to the effect of, LOL, so are you. Let people have their own opinions, sweetheart. I then found out how to block a user on the site, so I blocked him. That gave me internal peace, but it didn't last long. A year after the entire incident, I was using the 18-year-old account as a backup account, and for different art mediums. Nobody knew this account was linked to my other one. Somehow my old friend Gluten manages to find me without telling anything about how the two accounts are related to each other. And exactly 1 year later, in the summer, he PMs me on my other account. The message said, Hey, do you miss me, sweetie? I missed you since the unfriend, sad face. That's okay. My eyes widened in horror, and I kept thinking to myself, how did this pervert find me? He must have been really experienced in computer tech or hacking, because I have no idea how that possibly could have happened, let alone a year later. I replied to him saying, I unfriended you because you drew illegal things, and you should be banned from this website. What followed next was him trying to creepily get under my skin by role-playing with me. At this point, he was now 22, and I'm 13, still very much disturbed by him, but he only made things worse by talking to me in roleplay terms, using asterisks in everything he said. He literally said he was grabbing my bun gently, an asterisk, among other lewd comments to me, some asterisks and some without. I'm sitting there like, here we go again, obviously disturbed. So I blocked him on that backup account as well. Considering the types of things he drew, I think he definitely liked flirting with preteens on purpose, and probably got a kick out of it. For the most part, being on DeviantArt was okay for me after that, but people like him who drew lewd things like that plagued the site. He is the major reason I left it. So I know this entire encounter was online, and a lot of these experiences happen in real life, but you never know who you could end up meeting in real life from the internet. So Gluten, let's never meet again, and let's not meet in real life, and I hope you stop flirting with 12-year-olds. It's really for your own good. Comment down below and subscribe to my channel if you have not, especially you ladies. If you are new, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, as it really helps me out. And if you are already subscribed, welcome back and thank you for subscribing.